Hello and welcome to Surviving the Storm. I'm News Channel 8 Chief Meteorologist and Climate Specialist Jeff Berardelli.
And I'm Meteorologist Rebecca Barry. Thank you for joining us.
We are here at the U.S. Coast Guard Sector St. Petersburg, one of the service's largest. And later, we will visit the Coast Guard Station, Clearwater Air Station.
They will be our bases while we help you prepare for Florida's 2024 hurricane season and meet some of the country's most courageous first responders who help us survive the storm.
Besides Sector St. Petersburg base location and the Clearwater Air Station, the sector includes 5 additional multi-mission small boat stations placed up and down the west coast from Yankeetown in Levy County all the way south to Fort Myers Beach. The sector is responsible for more than 400 nautical miles of coastline. Coast Guard Sector St. Petersburg is located in a beautiful spot on Bayboro Harbor, in the shadow of the city skyline. But as peaceful as it is right now, these boats are always ready for rough seas and major missions.
This is Coast Guard Sector St. Petersburg, Florida, Sector St. Pete, Sector St. Pete. Mariners are advised that
search and rescue, busting drug smugglers, intercepting Florida-bound migrants. Just a few of the missions Coast Guard Sector St. Petersburg crews perform.
Our stations are ready 24/7. Think of like a firehouse.
Commander Michael Kale says Sector St. Petersburg force of more than 800 active duty, civilian and reserve, and 1,200 volunteer auxiliary members train daily and nightly for emergencies, and jointly with the Clearwater Air Station. In Florida, that means prepping for the ultimate disaster, a hurricane.
That involves having a plan, practicing the plan, and then exercising that when a storm arrives. If the storm looks like it may impact this area, then we'll move our resources to another location where we can monitor and then come back when it's safe to come back. If it's not going to look like it's going to impact Tampa or St. Petersburg, we will remain here.
Commander Frederick Pugh coordinates the sector's first responders. Is it ever too risky, let's say during a hurricane, for you to respond to vessels that may be in jeopardy?
Yes, whenever a hurricane is approaching, we the Coast Guard work with our industry and port partners to ensure the safety of the port. That includes commercial vessels that may be coming or going to port.
After the storm, the Coast Guard response is underway, sending out small and medium boats and cutters like the Shrike. Aids to navigation vessels spot and repair storm-damaged channel markers and buoys.
And if anybody was maybe got stuck out in the storm, we can do search patterns for search and rescue. We can bring in supplies, food, water to other government agencies, help them, support them.
Each year, Coast Guard Sector St. Petersburg crews conduct an average of 2,600 rescues, assisting more than 7,000 people. Florida Coast Guard crews rescued at least a dozen people during Hurricane Idalia. The storm moved from the Caribbean through the Gulf to make landfall on August 30th as a Category 3 hurricane in Florida's Big Bend region.
This used to be a pavilion right here with swings that everybody came and watched the sunset for.
Idalia caused as much as $5 billion in damage in Florida. Afterward, Sector St. Petersburg's aids to navigation crews assessed and repaired buoys, channel markers, and cleared the channels. Last year, National Hurricane Center forecasters put a new model online to help them predict storm surge. They tell us the technique performed very well, giving them great hope for the future. Along the coast, extremely high wind is the main ingredient in a storm surge recipe. Combined with low pressure, rainfall, and a shallow coastline like ours, it can be deadly.
It's the most impactful event. Certainly in a single day, it can kill the most people.
Cody Fritz is the National Hurricane Center's storm surge specialist.
And those that live within the Gulf of Mexico, certainly on the west coast of Florida, have experienced some pretty traumatic events over the last year or two.
Like Hurricane Idalia last August and Hurricane Ian in 2022. Ian's wind speed of more than 150 miles an hour pushed Gulf waters to a 15-foot high storm surge in southwest Florida, swelling bays, inlets, and rivers well inland. Ian caused 161 deaths and more than $113 billion in property damage, making it the costliest hurricane in Florida history, caused in large part by a surge that caught many by surprise.
I just didn't think this would happen. You never think this is going to happen to you.
Brittany Creech lost her home and everything in it when Ian storm surge flooded her Northport community. and Shelley Walton.
And then they kept talking about the surge, and well, we have not ever experienced the surge.
She ignored storm surge warnings and was left stranded on Sanibel Island, one of thousands who had to be rescued.
What's your name? Rick. Rick, I'm gonna get you out of here, all right?
Hurricane experts say that our region is more at risk for damaging storm surge.
You know, it's really areas like, say, Fort Myers Beach, Tampa Bay. Those are the areas that really kind of keep me up at night in terms of a storm surge.
To help improve predictions, the National Hurricane Center tested a new storm surge forecast model last hurricane season.
And it showed to be very, very good at predicting, or being accurate at predicting, that extreme storm surge event that we saw with like Hurricane Idalia.
Yet with millions of people relocating here, experts worry many Floridians will not prepare or take storm warnings seriously, perhaps only to learn the hard way.
And I don't think unless you really see it, you understand.
One of the biggest changes in hurricane forecasting this year involves something we all rely on, the National Hurricane Center's cone of uncertainty. Living in Florida comes with some risks. Landing in the path of a hurricane is easily the most perilous.
Predicted to become a Cat 3.
Forecasters use the cone of uncertainty to illustrate the likely track a storm may take, but the National Hurricane Center wants to steer us away from overly relying on it.
You should spend no more than 10 seconds on the cone, because it provides you context, and that's it. So it gives you context of where the storm is and the general direction of where it's moving.
The Hurricane Center consulted social scientists who found, although comfortable with the cone, people wanted more from it.
So they need to understand what conditions will be like in their backyard. Not in their state, not in their county, not in their city, in their backyard.
So, the National Hurricane Center is making some changes.
The addition of the inland watches and warnings is a step in that direction. And granted, it's not a perfect or holistic step, but it's starting to move us in the direction of localizing the risk, or allowing people to see what conditions might be like where they are.
And improving the chances of surviving the storm.
The U.S. Coast Guard has stations all over the globe, but one of the most active is right here.
Next, we head to the Clearwater Air Station. And later,
I'm Jennifer Lee. Coming up, I'll take you along for an open water training exercise with the U.S. Coast Guard as they prepare for any emergency after a storm.
welcome back to Surviving the Storm. I'm Rebecca Barry, coming to you now from the Coast Guard's Clearwater Air Station, the largest and busiest in the Coast Guard. Clearwater Air Station crews cover an enormous area of operation.
We cover out into the Gulf, and then we cover as far down as Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, and the Virgin Islands.
For Base Commander Captain Scotty Fye, this means planning, preparation, and regular training. Let's talk about Air Station Clearwater. What's the mission in regards to hurricanes?
So for our mission in regards to hurricane, it starts before the hurricane gets here. So we will do overflights to look at boat traffic, make call-outs on the radio to try to warn any mariners that are out there that bad weather is coming our way.
After the storm, air crews work with Coast Guard boats, aiding people in distress and clearing waterways. Air power includes 3 C-130 fixed-wing planes, 3 newer C-27s, and 7 H-60 helicopters.
What a lot of people don't realize is we, a lot of times, will evacuate our base. If the hurricane's going to hit here, we need to be able to respond as the hurricane's hitting, and if we can't launch our aircraft, we can't respond.
So take a tip from the Coast Guard and live by its motto of Semper Paratus. That's Latin for always ready. Constant training keeps Coast Guard first responders ready and able to save lives. Let's go to Coast Guard Station Sand Key in Clearwater Beach and ride along on a training mission responding to boaters in distress.
The Coast Guard Station Sand Key has vessels that can tackle any conditions from shallow water to turbulent seas, but sometimes their rescue efforts need a little assist from above.
It's no secret the U.S. Coast Guard has some pretty great days at the office, patrolling Bay Area waters in pristine conditions.
Coming up!
The kind of work that could almost make you forget this and the aftermath the Coast Guard responds to when residents get help they maybe never expected to need.
Yeah, there's always going to be people, no matter what their situation might be, there will be people that ignore the warnings and they will stay here and ride out the storm.
At the U.S. Coast Guard Station Sand Key, bosun's mate Shane Holmes explained even the pros take precautions before a storm.
We, as the Coast Guard, evacuates like everybody else to safeguard our assets, to safeguard our crews. So as soon as that storm passes, we are able to respond immediately.
That response requires enormous training, the kind of preparation you almost have to see to believe. The Coast Guard invited us along for a pretty intense front row seat to the training they perform to stay mission ready year-round. At Station Sand Key, a 45-foot response boat medium is equipped to respond to most offshore emergencies in some pretty aggressive conditions, up to 50 nautical miles offshore if necessary. But when someone needs an even faster rescue, the Coast Guard calls in an MH-60 Jayhawk and a crew that includes a highly trained swimmer.
So they're letting you know now that they're going to put a swimmer in the water.
Yep.
Every single maneuver, from the moment a waiting Coast Guard crew secures a rescue basket to the moment a diver drops from the helicopter, is carefully choreographed. Rob Husta, the Coast Guard's aviation survival technician, summed it up in a cool, calm, and collected way, considering he just plunged from a hovering helo into the Gulf of Mexico in full rotor wash.
And you were telling me every one of you is interchangeable on any Coast Guard vessel in the United States. You train this way everywhere.
We're all trained to the same standards.
So if we need help after a hurricane, they can send resources from anywhere in the country.
Yeah, they'll mobilize anyone that's willing to go and help. That's usually everyone, and then we'll all gel together as a team and get it done.
They're so used to doing the training exactly the same way as we do it in real life. It's muscle memory at this point, so you really don't even have to think about it, and you're just doing it to get it done safely and efficiently.
And you save people that way?
Absolutely, 100%.
This training doesn't end here. These crews will be back at it again tomorrow, the next day, the day after that. They stay ready in the event of a disaster like a hurricane or any emergency so they can save lives. On the Gulf of Mexico with the U.S. Coast Guard, I'm Jennifer Lee.
You never want to be in a situation where you need a Coast Guard rescue. Coming up, a lesson in staying safe on the water. We'll be right back.
Many federal, state, and local agencies join forces to help protect people and the environment from the threat of hurricanes and severe weather. The U.S. Geological Survey is one that plays a fundamental role. News Channel 8's Jeff Patterson is here to tell us about the mission.
These sand dunes help protect homes, businesses, and even roads. A U.S. Geological Survey project based in St. Petersburg is working to predict how storms and erosion impact these dunes and our coastline.
These are personal watercraft, and we add sensors to them so that we're able to measure the depth of the water.
Meg Palmston is a research oceanographer with the U.S. Geological Survey, and these are some of the tools she's using to predict the impact of tidal surge.
So this is a wave buoy. It measures the height of the waves.
All of the data is then used to help improve computer models that predict the impact of storms.
And I focus in on coastal change hazards, specifically looking at time scales of up to 6 days. So what's going to happen with the coast when the next storm hits.
That information is important because it helps local governments know if they should close roads before a storm and where to position emergency equipment and earth-moving equipment so recovery can be quicker.
Specifically, what we're interested in is looking at the dunes, because that's a great indicator of major changes to the beach.
After Hurricane Idalia, erosion had a big impact on Pinellas County beaches.
If we get a direct hit in here, you can forget about Bel Air Beach.
The USGS is using all of the information to help better predict future events.
We can take something really catastrophic and learn from it and improve for the next time.
And hopefully the next major storm will not destroy the work and investment that have gone into rebuilding these dunes. In Indian Rocks Beach, I'm Jeff Patterson.
Certainly, no one would ever consider taking a pleasure boat out when severe weather threatens, but out on the water, conditions can deteriorate quickly. The Coast Guard can help you prepare, avoid disaster, and stay in control when the weather turns ugly. To keep boating a pleasure, take the Coast Guard's advice before shoving off.
I would say you definitely know what you're getting into. Make sure you have all your proper safety gear on board, and make sure that you know your vessel.
And know your limitations.
I think there are mariners that think their boat's good enough to go out in a storm, or maybe they have everything they need and maybe they're going out on a fishing trip and they feel it's safe enough, when really that isn't the case.
Before a storm, avoid disaster by moving or securing your boat. After the storm,
be cognizant of the floating debris, piers, all of that stuff.
And let the Coast Guard know about any other hazards you may notice. Climate conditions on the other side of the world may have a huge effect on the number and strength of hurricanes this year. The El Nino and La Nina effect, next.
El Nino and La Nina. We talk about these weather phenomena year after year and their impact on hurricane forecasts. The return of La Nina, combined with very warm Atlantic waters, is leading forecasters to predict an especially active 2024 season. Last year, there was a strong El Nino in the Pacific. Now, that's a warm water phenomena that typically brings strong wind shear to the Atlantic. This led many forecasters to predict a quiet season early on. They were wrong, says National Hurricane Center Deputy Director Jamie Roan.
Guess what? It was active.
In fact, it was very active. The 2023 Atlantic hurricane season was the fourth most active on record, with 20 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes, including Hurricane Idalia, which affected much of the Tampa Bay region. Now, the tables are turned. La Nina is replacing El Nino.
La Nina tends to help or encourage hurricanes to form and encourage them to be stronger. Simultaneously, the ocean at this moment in time is atypically warm. It's warmer than usual for this time of year. So if those two conditions do in fact play out as we march forward in time, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a busy season. There's just no way out of it. The trick is, how do these two things evolve as we go forward in time? That part we just don't know yet.
Thanks in large part to hurricanes, Florida homeowners pay close to 5 times more than average Americans, according to a recent study. Insurance marketplace Insurify also found Florida homeowners will pay an average of $1,200 more in 2024, up 7% from last year.
Well, I've seen a lot of really heartbreaking damage. People losing homes, losing businesses.
Because of major storms like Hurricane Idalia and Ian, many insurance companies filed for rate hikes or pulled out of the state. Now is a good time to review your homeowner's insurance policy. Speak to your broker to make sure you have proper coverage or need flood insurance. Here's some more storm-ready advice. Store important documents in a dry place. Collect phone numbers for your insurance company, doctors, and veterinarians. Prepare your evacuation routes and plan a destination.
Thank you so much for joining us for Surviving the Storm.
And a special thank you to the men and women of the United States Coast Guard for hosting us.
Remember, now is the time to make a personal hurricane plan and stick to it.
It could quite literally save your life.
Good night.